Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane K. Today, I'll be breaking down Seeking Sister Wife, Season 4, Episode 5, titled Do You Have Condoms? If everyone who appreciates this content on my YouTube channel could please like and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. A lot of work goes into creating this content. I enjoy it. I'm happy to do it. The thumbnails, the script, the recording, the editing. And a great way to show your appreciation is just to hit that like button, subscribe, or let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Anyways, let's get into this episode, Seeking Sister Wife, Season 4, Episode 5. The episode opens with the Davis family. April, Jennifer, and Danielle are going to coffee, so April and Jennifer can dig a little deeper with Danielle to make sure this is the right lifestyle for her, since she and Nick have progressed to the next level. It's the ladies' first one-on-one experience with just the women, because typically Danielle, April, and Jennifer hang out collectively with Nick. Danielle is nervous. The girls want to know how things went with Nick, and Danielle thinks things went well. April thinks there is a lot that goes into these types of relationships. It's not all just sugar and spice, and you have to look inward and you have to self-reflect a lot. April lets Danielle know she has to express what's on her mind and she has to talk about her feelings. April says you can grow up a lot between age 22 and your 30s, and Danielle is young, so she has to be sure that she wants this lifestyle and that she can embrace a full polygamist relationship. It's a concern for April. She says things progressed faster with Nick and Jennifer because there were less people for Jennifer to get to know. It was just she and Nick, and with Danielle, she has to get to know and vibe and work with April and with Nick and with Jennifer as well. April is thankful that Danielle hasn't had any jealousy issues so far, and she lets Danielle know it's natural if she feels that. Danielle says she has never been in a polygamous relationship, so she worries about feeling secure and stable, and she also worries that April and Jennifer also feel secure and stable. She asks April and Jennifer how they overcome personal issues, how they handle things. April says it's human and it's natural to feel jealousy, but there is no hierarchy in the family. Jennifer says she and April are here to help Danielle make the transition into the plural lifestyle, and they hope to ultimately share a family together with Danielle when thinking in the long term. April asks how Danielle feels about that. To me, this feels gross. Danielle is very young, and no matter how smart you are, you really don't know yourself or life yet at 22, no matter how smart or mature you are or you think you are. So it feels like these older women that are well into their 30s are almost grooming her in a sense. I know they're trying to be supportive and build a relationship with Danielle, but these women know how they were at 22, and they know that they are coming from a more mature angle and that this 22-year-old still doesn't know what she wants in life or who she is. And they are being supportive, but also in a sense they're grooming her when she is in a malleable state, when they know at 22 they weren't able to know enough about themselves to make these kinds of choices. So it feels a little gross and sketchy to me. They ask Danielle if she wants kids one day, and she would love to have kids. April wants a big family. She wants more sister wives and more kids, and she has even considered having more kids herself, and she's still thinking about it. Danielle lives alone now, and Jen asked how she feels about everyone living together. Danielle says to go back to living with other people, there are things she will have to take into consideration. She explains that if she had friends growing up and she spent more than 24 hours with them, she was going bonkers. She would need space and time. Jennifer asks Danielle how she feels about sharing one bed together. In confessional, Danielle reveals that having 3 grown adults in the same bed worries her, that there might be conflicts in how they sleep. And she wonders what bed is big enough for 4 grown adults. Danielle says she wouldn't mind sharing a bed, but she tosses and turns, so she needs an end. To me, I don't think she is comfortable sharing a bed, and it seems to me like Danielle really likes and values space. And I think living with 3 adults and a teen and sharing a bed with 3 other adults might feel suffocating for her. April says they definitely need a bigger bed since they will have an additional 1 or 2 more add-ons. So it would then be 5 adults in a bed. April assures Danielle they want to be sure that she gets her privacy with Nick. The women plan to go do things alone with Nick all the time, and they want to make sure that each woman feels equally a part of this. Danielle thinks it's important to have that mutual, comfortable bond, and it won't happen overnight. Danielle says there are a lot of difficult emotions attached to becoming a sister wife, like having a feeling of love and security and potentially overcoming not having the spotlight on just herself. Danielle's biggest concern is being sure that she allows for the self-development to be in a situation like this. April suggests that they plan a weekend to spend every minute together for 3 days straight to see how they all function together and to see how it will work. Danielle is excited but nervous, but she wants to see how they will all function together. They can't say that they want to live together until they see what the experience is like. Danielle says some people may not be able to handle it. April says this may be too much for Danielle considering her age. April thinks that Danielle wants this, but it may not work out. Next up are the Foleys. They are visiting Dallas to visit Steve's kids who live with his ex-wife. They're in Dallas to see the kids and take a break from April. Steve, Brenda, and Steve's kids go horseback riding. Steve is letting his kids know that they are courting another sister wife. There has been distance between Steve and the kids starting a few months ago. They used to visit the kids in Dallas frequently, but now Steve's work requires him to travel a lot, and they're also getting the house built, so it has strained the time that the Foleys have to visit Steve's kids. Steve's son doesn't get to see his dad too often since they don't live together, so he tries to make the most out of every opportunity that he gets to see Brenda and his dad. Steve's daughter says she doesn't see her dad that much. She didn't even know he was coming down to see them. She doesn't care for family activities. It doesn't mean much to her. Seeing Brenda is fine, she says, and she says you get used to a step-parent when you have had one for so long. You realize they're just going to be there, so you accept it. Steve's son remembers when they all lived together. His mom, Brenda, Steve, him, and his sister. He knew what was going on, that his parents were living polygamy, and he could tell his mom wasn't happy. And so he was more confused by the situation than he was accepting of it. Steve says when he first met Brenda, Preston, his son, who is now 18, was 10, and his daughter, who is now 16, was 8. Steve says due to negative outside influences, his first wife left their relationship. Red flag. Steve had kids and a wife and a monogamous relationship. He turned middle-aged. He wanted variety. He met Brenda, and he probably was going to cheat or live polygamy and keep his family intact, or try to. His wife, who signed up for monogamy, and his kids, who only knew monogamy, in my opinion, were the victims of Steve's midlife crisis. Just because Steve is bored and wanting something new and feeling himself, it's not okay to all of a sudden say you are called to polygamy because you want to stick it somewhere else and no longer feel that loving feeling with your wife. It's very selfish to do to his kids and first wife, and it's all led by ego, in my opinion, and what Steve wants and desires. So Steve's first wife probably tried to accept it. She probably loved her husband, and she had 2 little kids, and she was probably cognizant of not wanting to rock their world, so she tolerated it. Also, Steve can get his selfish, ego-driven needs of lust met, basically, while keeping the family intact for the kids, more or less. That would be my take. Steve doesn't take any accountability or responsibility for how he did his first wife and kids. He blames the negative outside influences, but really, regardless of what anyone says, if his first wife felt happy and fulfilled living polygamously, she would stay. She wasn't happy. She has her own feelings and heart and mind and conscience. This is the father of her kids. If she felt she could stomach it and she was happy, she would stay. She didn't stay, not because people influenced her or got in her ear or got in her mind, or like she can't think for herself with her own mind and know her own feelings. She didn't stay because she signed up for monogamy and Steve wanted to have his cake and eat it too. And he cared more about that than the promise he made to his first wife. And he cared more about that than being a father to his kids. He's the problem, not his weak-minded wife or the outside negative influences. It's him. He is now doing to Brenda what he did to his first wife. And when April's new flavor hits 35 or 40, he will do the same thing to her that he is now doing to Brenda that he did to his first wife. This isn't about the outside influences that made his wife leave. This is about selfish Steve wanting his cake and eating it too when he signed up for a monogamous marriage with his wife and he had kids with her. She tried her best to tolerate polygamy, I'm sure, and it wasn't for her. Steve didn't want to keep their original marriage contract of monogamy. She left. It's on Steve, not on his ex-wife or the pesky outside influences or anyone else. This is on Steve to take accountability for. Anyways, Steve says there were tough times with the kids because of former family and friends putting negative thoughts inside of their heads. But Preston has managed to see how happy his dad is with Brenda, and Steve thinks his son is happy for him. His daughter is another story. Jaden, he says, is belaboring under that initial negative outside influence. According to Steve, of course. Steve isn't sure how she will react when they bring up that they are dating again. First of all, I don't think Preston is happy for Steve. I think he knows it's an effed up situation. He doesn't probably appreciate the hell his mom went through, but he tolerates it, and deep down there has to be some resentment or some type of feelings about this. I think it's gross how Steve assumes his daughter can't think for herself and make her own conclusions. He assumes she is pissed because of what people say around her, as if she can't think for herself. She is pissed because her dad is selfish. Her dad hurt her mom and he broke the family they had by breaking the initial marriage contract, shifting from monogamy to polygamy just because he wants his cake. Steve loves that cake. He wants his cake while keeping his family. And she knows it's selfish and fucked up and ego-driven, and she doesn't like it, and she knows it's not fair to her or her mom or brother, and that her dad is selfish. Steve likes to pin his wife leaving and his daughter being unaccepting and pissy over this on them being influenced by others. Not that they themselves, of their own minds and hearts and consciences, could feel some type of way, because Steve is the one at fault. So he doesn't want to think that it's actually coming from them. Then he can deflect and not take full responsibility and blame others. Steve is the one at fault. Steve is deflecting the blame on his wife and daughter not being able to think for themselves and being so weak-minded that they allow others to get in their heads and determine how they feel, rather than them having their own valid thoughts and feelings that allow them to feel as they do. Steve is doing this to deflect and to put the blame on their weak-mindedness and on others. It's everyone else's fault but his for being selfish and changing the contract and choosing to put his wants ahead of his kids and wife and what should have been his priority in life. Steve refuses to take any of the blame or accountability in this. It's everyone else's fault who put negativity in his first wife's mind and his daughter's mind. It has nothing to do with Steve's fucked up priorities and selfish behavior and how that actually makes his wife or kids feel. Now, Steve will drop Brenda if she doesn't get on board with April or his next flavor after that. Steve says in the beginning the kids were happy when Brenda came into the picture. They were younger and all their needs were met, so they were fine. And they didn't know that Brenda, Steve, and their mom were in a polygamous relationship. Steve says the kids initially had such a great relationship with Brenda. So great that the kids called Brenda Mom. But when the relationship ended with his first wife, that was unacceptable for his ex-wife. The kids were great with Brenda, and then things changed. Next up are the Epps family. India and Marcus got into a tiff in regards to how soon Marcus wants to have sex with Bina. It's India's birthday, so she doesn't want to think about that, and India and Taryn are setting up for her birthday party. Taryn and Marcus have a surprise for her. India's sister is coming when she told India she wasn't going to be able to make it. India's older sister, Chastity, is here for India's birthday to surprise her. India was super busy helping Taryn get boxes, and when she comes out, she finds her sister in the kitchen. Chastity reveals she would never be in a polygamous relationship. So, initially, when it came to the Epps dynamic and what they became, she felt it was because India felt she wasn't worth being with just one person monogamously. But now that Chastity knows the dynamic, she gets why they work. India, Chastity, and Taryn are putting together hangover survival kit goodie bags, and Marcus is handling the cooking. He wants to show India's friends and family how he gets down. Apparently, cooking is Marcus's forte. India is excited her sister is there. She says her sister is always supportive of what she wants to do, although she may not always agree with it. India lets Chastity know they do want to make their family dynamic more balanced by adding one more person. So Marcus went on a date with Bina. She explains to her sister that Bina is a family friend of Marcus and Taryn's for over a decade, and they never dated before. Chastity has questions right out the gate. She says if she wasn't interested before back then in living the lifestyle, why is Bina interested now? Taryn explains back then they weren't living polygamously. Chastity wants to know if back then and through the years, Bina always liked and wanted Taryn's man. India jumps in and says because it's a friendship level, she didn't think about it like that Bina may have always wanted Marcus. India says she never thought that way because she didn't feel threatened at all. She does feel threatened. She even said she is territorial, and she is very resistant to Marcus having sex with Bina until she is sure Bina will be a serious sister wife and a part of the family. And she keeps reminding Marcus she has to be on board with wanting Bina to be a serious part of the family as well. I don't think India wants Bina or a third wife in reality. I think she is happy, as is Taryn as well, and they both accept each other for Marcus's sake. And I think Marcus is the only one who really wants to add more variety for selfish reasons. And both India and Taryn agreed to add another wife because otherwise they know Marcus will cheat and they will have less control over the situation. India is saying she doesn't feel threatened and downplaying this so her sister can swallow it more easily with less chewing, less questions, less pushback. When India told her sister she didn't feel threatened by Bina, Marcus kissed her and told her he liked her answer. Of course, because it suits him and spins his narrative for India's sister. In confessional, Marcus says Bina is threatened by India and her possessiveness over him. Marcus thinks if both Bina and India are open-minded and they give it some time, they have more in common than not, so he thinks ultimately Bina really could be a good fit for their family. Chastity, India's sister, asks Marcus how the date went, and he says it went good. Chastity says there are people who don't get why India is in this type of family dynamic. They don't understand the financial aspect or the aspect of having that extra person to love and be supportive of. She thinks people think India wasn't emotionally available to love one person, or that India felt required to come into this type of relationship. Chastity's question is, if they are comfortable with it, India would be like the outside person looking in because the history is there. She asks how India feels being the newest member since Marcus and Taryn have a history with Bina. And India thought she was already in the gang. But now, Marcus may incorporate someone who has been there longer and known both Taryn and Marcus longer. I think that's a great question. India says she never thought of it like that. I think because Taryn and Marcus have been friends with Bina for over a decade, adding her as a third to balance things will just do the opposite in the family dynamic. And it may end up isolating India or making things more complicated for her. Taryn tells Chastity she is in the gang, and her facial expression as Chastity was bringing up valid points to her sister looked very resentful. Chastity thinks it's strange. She says if they brought in Bina, she feels India would be at a disadvantage because India would be the one who has known Marcus for the least amount of time. She thinks bringing Bina in with that pre-existing relationship and history with Marcus and Taryn would ruin the dynamic. She thinks it's a hierarchy where they take direction from Marcus and they navigate from there. And she says having the third wife be someone they know would be a problem. And if it was someone they didn't know, she wouldn't be as apprehensive about it. Chastity is super smart and she sees everything. Tia is super lucky to have a sister like her, and I'm glad that she mentions these valid points and is very supportive of her sister. Next up are the Joneses of Portland, Oregon, Sidian and Tasha. Sidian is packing for his trip to visit Ariel in the Philippines. He's excited to see Ariel, but it's a long ways away, and he wants things to go smoothly. The best outcome for Sidian would be that he and Ariel work well together and click, and that Ariel would become a new sister wife in their family. Tasha makes sure Sidian brings condoms, and Sidian asks Tasha if she is good with them having sex. And she is good with it, but she wants Sidian to check in with Ariel to make sure she is good with it too. Sidian is excited about the trip, but he is sad to be leaving Tasha and everything he is familiar with behind. Tasha thinks it's important for Sidian to go be with Ariel because he needs to spend time with her, and if Sidian doesn't go, they will never gain Ariel as a potential sister wife. Sidian says they have a lot riding on this trip emotionally. They invested a lot of time talking with Ariel, and they made bonds with her, and they put a lot into this. So Sidian hopes that he and Ariel work out together. Sidian bids adieu to Tasha and heads to the airport. He has high hopes for the trip, and it's the most important thing they have done in their seeking process. But Sidian has a sick feeling it could not work out, and it will be a huge blow to them. Tasha feels it's been a long time coming, and if Sidian doesn't go, Ariel will lose hope in this ever working out. Back to the Davis family. The Davises are getting packed to go on a weekend staycation with Danielle so everyone can be together and be around each other to see how everyone does interacting together. Nick says things are going well with Danielle and he's in love with her. He's a sucker for love. Personally, I don't buy that. I think Nick likes cake, but is he in love? In my opinion, no. But he says he's in love. I think he loves that cake. Nick says he's looking to fall in love as much and as often as he can. The Davises pick up Danielle. She is nervous about this being their first weekend together. She says her siblings live over 900 miles away. So she is thankful she has the Davises because she doesn't have that family vibe, those Sunday dinners or those family holidays. She doesn't have that close biological family, so she appreciates the Davises. Danielle says sometimes she anxiously talks and thoughts pour out a little more than they should, like on this car ride, she's incessantly talking. She says to have people genuinely care and want to spend time together and make memories is huge because she wouldn't have that without the Davises. April can tell Danielle is nervous, and when she gets nervous, Danielle likes to talk about what she is nervous about, and she likes to use that as a mechanism to make herself feel better. So April lets her do her thing. She says it's one of those things of learning each other's personalities, and that's how Danielle copes with her nerves. Jennifer's main concerns for this weekend are that maybe Danielle has different ideas about how the relationship works. So she wants to have open communication about that, and it will be really good to have Danielle see how it is for a full weekend together. The Davises decide on the sleeping situation since there is only usually a standard sized bed, so they're not going to be all able to sleep together like they usually do. April says the first night should be Nick and Jenny since she has spent more nights alone with Nick than both Nick and Jennifer or Nick and Danielle. She thinks it's important to give the other woman that time, especially with Danielle being new to the situation. April thinks it's good for Danielle to experience not having that time with Nick. April says the second night Nick should be with Danielle. Jennifer says she doesn't feel like she has any less intimacy time with Nick. Nick makes them all feel like they each get personal intimate time with him. April says if the potential sister wife coming in doesn't have the right personality, they will go crazy. She says there have been people who tried to live with them that she can't stand. She gets too annoyed. So it's very important that the personalities have to mesh. Back to the Epps family, India is excited that her friends and family are coming together to celebrate her 30th birthday. It's the first time everyone will be in the same room, and everyone is very opinionated. So India is interested to see how it goes. Marcus says India's sister is very strong-willed and opinionated, and his sister will also be attending, and she is the same way. So that's what Marcus is worried about, since both sisters are very protective of their siblings. Marcus's sister asks why they are looking to add someone else to the family. India starts talking about it, and Marcus gives her a kiss to distract India, just like he did when her sister was asking her the tough questions. Marcus has this gross apron on, by the way, that says, "Once you put my meat in your mouth, you're going to want to swallow." Honestly, with how much this guy references sex and makes innuendos, it seems to me he has a little one, because men who are confident sexually and are working with something impressive don't need to talk about it and reference it. They know they are skilled. It's the overly sexualized men like this that are typically the most disappointing in bed, by the way. Marcus's sister says after they came to her house, she wondered what they were doing to her. She says she doesn't know why they are seeking a new wife, because what they have here currently works. So she hopes the family remains solid. She says India is now like her sister-in-law, so she would hate for them to add a new dynamic and it throwing off what is good already. Marcus's sister asks India's sister what her perspective is on India. And Chastity says initially she thought India didn't believe in herself or understand that she was worth having just one person, having monogamy. Chastity doesn't like the idea of them seeking a third sister wife. She isn't interested. She has accepted their family as it is now, and she doesn't want to accept anyone else. Chastity says as she spent more time with the family, she understood their dynamic more. She would never try polygamy herself, but she understands it. Initially, she stayed open to support India and stay in her corner even if she disagreed with India's choices. She wanted to be supportive and to be there in case things didn't work out. Marcus says if the ladies talk about their lifestyle, it could be a disaster. So he focuses on getting the food done. One of India's friends has a question. She wonders who is trying to find sister wives. Is it all three of them? India explains that Marcus actively goes out and fishes. He reels the women in, and if he likes them, the women get to meet his wives because his wives have to clear the woman and accept her for it to progress. India says what she and Taryn have is so solid that if the potential with the new person doesn't hold a candle, it's not passing the wives' approval to get more serious for the potential sister wife to meet the kids or go any further. They're looking to duplicate what they have already done, India says. The F's family friend Lakeisha is jealous because back in high school, she dated Marcus. India jokes that they tried to add Lakeisha and she didn't want to come. Lakeisha says some people look at Marcus's life and they don't agree with what he is doing. But it's the decision Marcus made, and it's the decision that the women are making because it's not a normal way to live. Chastity asks Lakeisha what she felt when India came into the family. She says she loves India now, but before she didn't have feelings at all because she wondered why India would come into Marcus's existing relationship with Taryn and break it up. But right now, she loves India. Chastity asks if she saw India as the other woman, and Lakeisha explains all she saw initially was Taryn was that one for the longest, and here comes India, and Lakeisha wondered why. India says she also had to learn that people perceived it that way because when she met Marcus, Marcus was a single man in a monogamous relationship with her. India says she would never go in and break up a home. That isn't the type of person she is. She wouldn't want that on her. India says when Lakeisha brought up the fact that she initially felt that she was the other woman, she didn't know what was going on between Marcus and Taryn at the time. And Lakeisha also didn't know that Marcus was separated from Taryn at that time and that Taryn had moved out. So India wanted to make it clear that initially she and Marcus were in a monogamous relationship. And then Taryn got brought back in, so she didn't want Keisha to feel that she was the one who ruined the relationship between Taryn and Marcus. Their initial relationship ended prior to India coming along. Next up are the Foleys. They just finished horseback riding with Steve's kids, and now they're upholding the family tradition of making homemade chicken noodle soup. Steve wants to break the news to the kids that he and Brenda are looking to add someone new to the family again. Steve says he feels a connection with April like he hasn't felt since he met Brenda, and they both wanted to grow and not be a passing moment. Steve says there are things they have to overcome, especially regarding how Brenda feels about April's communication levels. They feel like they need to talk to the kids, and they are teenagers, so you never know what mood they will be in. Steve has a complicated relationship with his kids. He says his daughter is a 16-year-old teenage girl that knows how to press his buttons, and she knows how to get what she wants, and she also knows how to get a reaction out of her dad. In that confessional scene, as Steve mentions this, Brenda looks like her soul is being sucked out of her. When he mentions that he hasn't felt this way since he felt this way with Brenda, that he feels about April now, she looks devastated. He is being so selfish and doing what he wants, eating that cake without even considering that he is sitting, telling his wife, who already replaced his first wife, who left after not liking polygamy, that he feels what he hasn't felt since he met her with April. This is all to serve Steve and about his feelings. It's not about the lifestyle. It's about Steve getting bored and wanting to feel in love, that gushy honeymoon phase over and over and over to satisfy his ego and to satisfy himself. In my opinion, this is not really about polygamy. Everyone sits to dinner and Steve lets the kids know that he and Brenda have started looking for somebody to add to the family. Steve says he is nervous to talk to his kids about something this big and important, so there is underlying nervousness, and it has been a while since they were out searching for a potential sister wife, so this conversation hasn't come up in a long time. Steve wonders what they do if the kids don't understand. Steve says they want everybody to feel comfortable and to know what's going on. Brenda says they want to know any thoughts or concerns or questions that his kids might have. Steve's son tells Steve, good for you if that's something that makes you happy. He asks if the new wife would be Brenda's friend and Steve's lover. Brenda explains she is looking more for a best friend and a sister. Steve's daughter asks, then why doesn't Brenda just get a friend? I have to agree. Steve says there's a difference between somebody that's in a relationship like this and somebody who is just a friend. Steve's daughter asks, so what if Brenda wants to bring in another husband or a boyfriend into the family? She asks her dad if he would be okay with that. If the guy would just be Steve's friend, but Brenda's husband or boyfriend. You go, girl. She rocks. Good for Jaden. Steve asks if that's something Brenda wants, and Brenda says, at this moment, no. Steve's daughter, Jaden, asks if that's comfortable. Jaden asks her dad, if your parents came to you when you were like 16 and said, hey, I'm going to get another girlfriend, how he would feel. She says it's an uncomfortable situation to be in because it's weird for your parents to date multiple people. She tells her dad she thinks when you become a parent, those kinds of relationships and activities should not be a thing. Steve just says and sighs, and his daughter says that's a decision that her father should have considered before having 2 kids. I love Steve's daughter. She rocks. She says it like it is, and she schooled her dad and Brenda. And guess what? She is right, and she said it well. You go, girl. I agree 100%. Jaden goes on to tell Steve, divorce your wife and get another girlfriend if you want to. She says she genuinely thinks Steve's lifestyle is disgusting and gross. Steve is red in the face. He looks angry, like he's ready to explode in a major way. Wow. I totally applaud Steve's daughter. She told the truth, and I agree with what she said, and I applaud her for not allowing her dad and Brenda to pussyfoot around this bullshit. If I had a kid, I'd want a daughter just like that. Good for her. I bet her mom is so proud of her. Steve's daughter is my favorite person on the show so far. Anyways, next time on Seeking Sister Wife, Danielle tells Garrick, even though Roberta is his wife and they're committed and all that, she is not here. Danielle says Roberta might have a hard time committing to coming to the U.S. and actually booking that ticket. Danielle says it feels like it's a distant dream. Steve is at his hotel and Ariel calls and says she is here. Steve is seeing Ariel for the first time. He says his heart is going crazy. And hopefully, Ariel is everything they have been looking for. Nick asks Danielle how her last relationship ended. She found someone else and she decided she didn't want to be with that guy that she was with anymore. Nick asks, you jumped ship on him? What? April says the reveal that Danielle might be the type of person to run away if things got serious was something they didn't know before. Steve tells Brenda he doesn't know where tonight came from. Brenda asks, should we not say anything to the kids? She wonders if they should involve the kids anymore. Brenda says it hurts her because she knows how much Steve loves the kids. Yes, I'm sure that's why he made them a priority in life. It doesn't look like they're his priority so far. Steve says he is still an evil person. He says at this point, the thought of, is this the right thing to do, enters his mind. He wonders, where does this put us? What do we do? Wow. So now Steve is a victim of his unaccepting kids, and he's shocked his daughter feels this way. Everything his daughter says is accurate. So this will be interesting to see if Steve can hear and process this and pick the right priority over his cake. We'll see. And it's also interesting that Steve is playing the victim, saying, oh, now he's an evil person, because he's trying to frame it like he's being victimized by his daughter and his wife not being in agreement with his behavior and his lifestyle. We'll have to see how this goes. Will Steve pick the right priority over his cake? That does it for this episode of Seeking Sister Wife. To my YouTube viewers, please like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts in the comment box. I'll see you guys later in the week for my next episode of my Sister Wives Rewatch, Season 2, Episode 11, Sister Wives in the City of Sin. And if I have time to fit in one more episode this week, it will be Episode 2 of Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. And then next week, I'll cover the next chapter of Book Club, Chapter 6 on Janelle. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.